let me go ahead and answer the question that's in your head right now. What in the heck is going on in here? We're kind of out of order here, aren't we? Aren't we supposed to have an offering or something? Aren't we supposed to be getting into another song, sitting the I told some of the guest services this morning as we met before church, I said, it's going to be a little different today. It's going to be a little different. We're in a brand new series called Vision and Values. So we thought we'd we took a chance last week. We did one service last week. We had barbecue for everybody. And if you were here last week, did you have a good time? Yeah, well, it was fun. Well, we did so much. It was just, the place was like packed for one service. And the music was just excellent. And then God's Spirit was moving in here. And His presence was so thick in here. And then we had this incredible barbecue. And all the time just sitting out under the tents, out in the parking lot, talking with everybody. If you missed last week, you picked the wrong week to go on vacation. I was going to say, we had so much fun here. And what I told you last week is, we have this, that God has this vision for us, and God has a plan for us, and He works through all in our lives. He's doing all kinds of things through the lake. And I've noticed in people's lives that you're concerned with other people, and you're focused on other people. And before I get really good and started today, I think it'd be kind of appropriate for us just to pause for a minute. See, I thought there was just like a couple of people in Florida that we knew. And there was a couple people in Texas that we knew. And I've got relatives in Texas and Houston area. I've got some friends just outside of Houston in a church, and they're serving every day in the community. Now Florida's getting ready for it. And I was seeing all these emails and posted. I think everybody in here knows somebody in Florida this morning. And I thought, let's just, if we could just, we need to pray. It's coming on land. I mean, it's kicking Key West, and once it gets across that, then it's hitting the mainland, and we have family. And some of you sitting right there, I have family that's down there. I know a gentleman. His son is down there, and he tried to get him out and couldn't. So let's just pray. God, you're in control of everything. You're in control of it, even the weather. Its patterns and as the earth rotates and all. But God, today, I know that many of us are focused on what's happening in Florida. We're waiting for a phone call later on this afternoon, a phone call later on this evening. Is everybody all right? And then get through it okay? And there's people I know personally here that attend this church, that serve in this church, on staff here at the church. Their families there. So God, today, in the next several hours of this hurricane, just protect them, give them safety, do something extraordinary that can only be explained by your hand protecting that family, those individuals, those communities, those towns. God, we'll praise you for how you rescue your children. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. See, I think there's times, people aren't always stubborn. People are just set in their ways. And this is home, and this is where I live, and I'm not leaving this. I'm gonna stay here, and if something happens, I'm gonna fix it while I'm here. And I think God sees that in us. It's a compassion that's in us. And in Jeremiah, when God's trying to say, I have a plan, I know the plans I have for you, that if you'll seek me with your whole heart, if you'll seek me with your whole being, if you'll seek me with your mind, if you really experience my presence in your life, I will show you my plan. I will show you how I'll protect you. I have a vision for you. I have a plan for you. And if you'll visualize what I can do for you in your mind, if you can visualize that in your mind, then that vision, it'll become a reality. It'll actually become a reality. And we talk about this series, Vision and Values, and that God has a vision for the church. And when I'm reading and I'm thinking about where the church can go, I see this vision. But sometimes we forget that the vision is not just to be said. I can't just sit up here and say there's a vision that God has for us. That vision has, prerequisites, determining factors to make that vision a reality. And I believe that God has given the lake a vision for His church right here. And that vision is to challenge us, to bring us to a point to where we can become the church that He wants us to be. And please, don't mishear me on this, that, I thought we were doing that. Well, yes, He has been doing some amazing things in the life of the church and in your individual lives. I've heard stories. I've talked with you. I've had the conversations. I've prayed with you. I've been and seen where you're struggling and God has done this, and we've all experienced this. We know what God is doing, but He's not done yet. I mean, really, He's just getting started. He's just getting started here because if we still have breath, then His plan is still in effect. It doesn't go to a certain date. He has His goal. He has His vision for us. It's always working. He has His vision for us as individuals. He has His vision for us as a church. He has His plan for us as a church. And I read this. I heard it this week, and then I read it again in the Old Testament. I thought this was so appropriate for this series. And it's really weird because we've been planning this series for a while, but it wasn't until Tuesday that I read this verse, and I said, we should have had this in my mind for a couple months now, getting ready for this. Isaiah 43:19, and this is what it says. God is speaking to Isaiah, and He says, for I am about to do something new. He's already created the world. He's already gone through the floods and all that. I'm about to create something new. See, I have already begun. It's already in motion. I'm already doing something new. Do you not see it? Do you not see it? I'm about to take you just a little further on your journey as a follower of Jesus. I've already started this. I'm going to take you a little bit further. I'm about to take you a little bit further on your journey as my church. Do you not see it? It's already begun. And as we look back, if we just look back 2.5 years, and see what He's been doing, how we've seen God's hand on us. Not just as a church, but how we've seen God's hand on us as individuals, how He is molding and shaping us to His plan. We had a plan, but it hasn't quite worked out that way. My plan was to retire from UPS, not work anymore. That lasted 24 hours. He took care of my plan and said, hey, I got something else for you. You're just getting started. That driving the truck, that was just a warm-up. You thought that was hard. I'm going to make you a preacher. Then you'll see what work is like. You'll see how hard it can be. You know, this is what He does in us. And then we look at what God is doing. We realize God does have a plan. And we're part of it. This is not He's going to do it alone. We're part of His plan for us. And seeing where God has been will help us recognize the vision that He gives us. Sort of like, believing and seeing. I said that last week, believing and seeing. But what makes the vision of the lake so important is this. It's how we place value on what God has already done and what God is doing. We place value on it. It's important. We place some value on this. When we give value to a ministry, when we give value to an outreach opportunity, when we give value to God's Word, when we give value to the worship in here, when we give value to the gospel, we just don't skip over and just secondhand share. We put value on it. It's that important. We put value on something that God gives us. It helps us. It adds to the fact that we can see the vision that He has for us. We'll see it come to pass. I mean, I can stand up here and tell you, this is where I think the lake is going to be in 2 years. And I know 3 years ago I said, this is what I look for in 3 years. I can do that. I can say 5 years. I can say 10. I can say 15 years. And if I do that, a lot of you are going to say, you're crazy. That's impossible. We're a little church out here in the country. That can't happen here. But when we place value on what God is doing and what God has done so far through the church and through our lives individually, believe me, the vision, the impact of Lake Community Church on the kingdom of God. And when you open the New Testament and read that with God, nothing is impossible. See, I've already begun. Do you not see it? Do you believe that? I mean, do you believe that with God, nothing is impossible? I mean, do you really believe that? Well, at least 4 of you do. But so, I'll make it 5. All right, 6. Hey, I feel like an auctioneer. Do I have 6? I got 7, 7, 7, 7. Give me 10, 10, 10, give 15, 15. I got 15. Bam, sold to Lake Community Church. No. See, with God, nothing is impossible. The word is nothing. And we put impossibilities on things. See, there's 2 types of people in church today. There's two types of people that attend church today. And if I were to ask you that in a little questionnaire, it'd be pretty easy to say, oh yeah, that's easy. There's lost people and there's saved people. There's believers and there's non-believers. And that would be like an obvious answer, but you have to understand, it's difficult to tell the difference between a lost person and a saved person. It's hard to tell the difference between a believer and a non-believer. You just have a conversation with somebody, or you read their comments on Facebook. And some of the things that they say, some of the things that people do, that they say they're believers, sound and act and look more like non-believers, right? I mean, have you ever played church league softball? These are church people. And I've been out there and I've heard things like, what? What church do you go to? Because I can't believe anybody in church would say that. Oh, you're the preacher. Oh, so, I've been out there. Or going to a church-sponsored golf tournament. And you hear something, what was that? Who said that? Are they in this? Oh, you're the deacon. Oh, well, sure, you can say that. I've never heard that said in church. You know how it's hard for us to tell the difference between a believer and a non-believer. It's so different. It is. A non-believer would possibly walk in the doors here and they're all smiling and happy because they're putting on a front. They don't want us to know. But then a believer in Jesus Christ comes in all downtrodden and depressed. They got this frown that touches their shoulders. What? It's hard to tell these people apart. So it's not the non-believers and the believers and the lost and the saved. There are two types of people that attend church. Two types of people that we come in contact with in our everyday life. Two types of people. Those who see and those who don't see. Those who see what God is doing. They recognize what God is doing. That He's doing something new. And then those who don't see God doing anything at all. And they'll sit side by side, they'll sit in the same room, they live in the same neighborhood, maybe even in the same house. I'm talking about consumers and contributors. Consumers and contributors. Consumers are spectators. Consumers are the ones that sit in the bleachers. They're up in the stands. They're watching from a distance. They're second guessing and criticizing every decision the coach makes. They're loyal one minute. They've got the jersey, they got the painted face, and then the next minute they're disgusted. They're burning the jersey. They're just never satisfied, and all the time that they're complaining and second guessing, they're just sitting there waiting for the vendor to come by with the hot dogs, the drinks, and the peanuts so they don't have to get up and go get it. They want it brought to them. If it's too hot, if it gets too hot, if it gets too cold, if it's too rainy, if it's too crowded, if things are just get out of hand, if things are not going their way, they give up and leave. I'm about to step on some more. Anyway, contributors now. Contributors, on the other hand, they're in the game. They're hands-on. They'll get dirty. They'll want to play. They want to be involved. It doesn't matter if they're just going to just do a pinch hit once every other game. It doesn't matter if they're just going to be a pinch runner for this inning right here. That's all you can do is run bases if you're lucky. You touch all three after you get on first or second or whatever. And it doesn't matter if they're on a special team. They only go out there for onside kicks. They're never out there for anything else, but on onside kicks, they got great hands. They're on there, but they're in the team. They're part of the team, and they're involved. They're involved in what's going on. They're involved in the ministry of the church. They're involved. They're contributing to the mission of the church. They're part of what God is doing. They contribute. I mean, they're in the pond. Right now, they're in the pond. They were at the doors when you came in. They cleaned yesterday morning so that you would come in and the bathrooms would be clean and all the stalls would be refreshed and the papers and everything would be right where it's supposed to be. They just led us in worship. They'll lead a connection group or attend a connection group. They'll contribute. They'll actively participate in what they see God doing in the church. I had a dinner Friday night with, I guess I'd say my college buddies, because we've been friends for like 44 years. We've known each other. We met in Statesville Friday night, and one's from Delaware. We got talking, and he knows I'm a pastor. And I said, hey, he didn't think too much about church. I said, but you come down here Sunday, and I'll buy you lunch. And he said, well, he'd understand that. He appreciates that, because where he goes to church in Delaware, he said, there are no churches like that. He said, I go into churches in Delaware, and nobody speaks to me. Nobody shakes my hand. Nobody recognizes me. Nobody welcomes me. I have no friends in Delaware, and I've lived there 25 years. None. I said, you got to be kidding me. He said, no, I have no real friends. They're all here in North Carolina. I said, well, sell your house and move. I know some realtors. We'll get you a place. But he said, but when he visits one of my friends in Statesville, he said, everybody knows him. I said, when you come in here, everybody's going to know you. They're going to come talk to you. I know some of you personally. I know you're going to get up out of your seat and go greet somebody that you haven't seen before and make them feel like they're home. You're contributors. I see that. You see what God is doing. It happens here. Consumers desire the benefits of a church without the responsibility. They desire the benefits, but they don't want any responsibility. They don't want to be trained. They don't want to be challenged. They don't like to have their toes stepped on. Sorry, but they don't. They don't like to do that, because that doesn't feel good. They don't like it, so they'll give up and they'll leave. They don't want to be scheduled as a volunteer, because their life's too busy. There's too much else to do. They can't really set aside. A volunteer, they have to show up early. They might have to stay a little later. I don't want to do that. I just want to come in. It's not too hot, if it's not too cold, it's not too crowded, it's not too rainy outside. Walk across the parking lot. They might not have umbrellas. I just want what I want. And I don't have time for all this. They're like couples that choose to live together without committing to marriage. They desire the responsibility. They desire the benefits, but they don't want the responsibility, because if things just don't go their way, things aren't going like they want them to go, they'll just give up and leave. Consumers are always looking for something better, and they'll always find something better. Contributors will always make something better. Can always make something better because they contribute to it. How do they do that? How do they make something better by contributing? By participation. Participation. That's one of our core values here. We have 8 core values here. Like, you probably didn't know that, did you? We have core values. These core values, they're what define who we are. And we put value on our core values. They're core values. That's who we are. We place value on it. And participation is one of those core values, because through participation, we apply this to our vision. We apply this. It's valued because it transforms consumers into contributors. If we get people to participate, they no longer consume, they contribute. And when we participate, we're spiritual contributors. We are not spiritual consumers anymore. We're actually seeing what God is doing, and we're being a part of it. We're joining in what God is doing. One of the best examples I found in the Bible was in the early church, the first early church in Acts chapter 2. They were contributors. They participated. This is what it says in Acts chapter 2, verse 42. Those are the new believers, the new followers of Jesus. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer. These new believers participated in what God was doing in the early church. God was doing something new. They didn't just go to the temple and listen to the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the priests read from the Old Testament scrolls. No, God was doing something new, and they saw it. They were experiencing it firsthand, and they wanted to be a part of it. Just listening to the apostles' teaching wasn't enough. Just showing up on a Sunday morning wasn't enough for them. They had to have what God was doing there with the apostles. They had to have what God was doing there in their little church group. They had to have that in their life. They needed to have it every day. They wanted it as part of their life every day, with their families, with their friends, when they went to work, when they sat down and had a meal together, when they got together to pray. They wanted that in their life. So they participated in what they saw God doing. They wanted to make a big deal about it. They became contributors, and the church increased. If you read that passage, you get down toward the end of this passage, and it says that the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. And people read this and say, wow, them apostles could preach, because they were bringing people in and people being saved. What were they preaching? Because they didn't have the New Testament, and they weren't allowed to have the scrolls from the temple. They shared the gospel. People say, wow, they must have done a really good job. I don't think it was just them. This is what I believe. I believe it was participants. Those who were participating in what the apostles were teaching. It had more to do with the participants than it did the preachers. Those who put what was being said to work. It was a result of these believers uniting together as one. One vision, one goal, one mission. To participate in what they saw God doing. To be a part of what God was doing. They were joining together for the mission. They were participating in being the church. They were encouraging each other, praying for each other, supporting each other, joining with each other to show the love of God to others. Nothing was stopping them. Nothing was impossible for them with God. They were contributors to God's plan for the church, for His vision. And when we, as Lake Community Church, unite as one, when we come together, we contribute as one, and we participate as one. We continue the mission as one. We're on the same vision together as one, because nothing is impossible for God's church. For I have begun something new. I'm about to do something new. See, I have already begun. Do you not see it? Do you not see it? Let's pray. God, there's a sense that, I'm confused if I'm a contributor, if I'm a consumer. I feel like I'm a contributor, but I still have excuses. So the excuses, does that make me a consumer? I mean, do I just come just to be here? Or do I come to take part here? Do I participate? Because participation is such a big value here. I didn't know we had core values, but now I find out we got 8. It defines who we are as a church, to participate in what you're doing. So God, today, could you open my mind's eye to see, to look back, to recognize that answered prayer, that moment of comfort, that moment of assurance that you're in control, that moment of peace during all the chaos. Even now with all the storms. And the people that'll be left homeless or underwater, their houses and possessions be underwater or destroyed or blown away. You know, when I was watching the news the other day, I could see people in the midst of all the flooding there in Texas. And they had a peace about them. They had carried on a conversation. There was something about this community where people actually cared for them and were participating in their relief, were participating in their rescue. They were participating as the church that God designed, the vision that God had for the church. Maybe today, maybe I need to place value on participation. Not just watch the game. Not be an armchair quarterback or a bleacher coach. But get in the game. Get dirty. Because I see you doing this, God. I see you raising up children. get baptized. I see you working with students. I'm going to get with some other couples and learn more about your word. I just love to greet somebody in the door because I'm excited to be here. I want them to be excited to be here. I want to be a doorkeeper like I read about in the Old Testament. They participated. The major role of a doorkeeper was to prepare people for what they had already experienced, what they had already saw God doing. Doorkeepers were participants. God, that's where I want my life to be, as a participant in what you're doing, to make a difference. To make a difference, not just in my life, but in someone else's life. So today, that's my goal. That's my prayer. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Spirit come. That's what we want in our lives. You can have a seat. You can have a seat. There it is again. That's that question. What the heck is going on? I thought we were done. Oh, no. We have 8 core values. I just did 1. We got 7 more to go. No. I love that song, that fullness, because the people that participate, that are contributors, they have the fullness of God. His Spirit has come, and they can't just keep it to themselves. They can't just watch from the sidelines anymore. They can't just be a consumer. They have to be a contributor because they recognize Isaiah when he says, for I'm about to do something new. See, I've already begun. Do you not see it? See, those contributors that I talked about earlier, those contributors, they see it. They see it, and because they see it, contributors are doers. They do. They just don't watch. They do. It goes along with the book of James. We read in the book of James in chapter 1, verse 22, it tells us, but don't just listen to God's word. Don't just listen to God's word. Let's do what it says. Otherwise, you're only fooling yourself. Otherwise, you're only a consumer. If you just listen, you're just a consumer. You're not a contributor. When we go beyond listening to God's word, we go just a little bit further. I'm doing something new. We go just a little bit further beyond listening to God's word and do what it says. God responds. God takes notice. Did you know that? That if we go beyond listening to God's word and actually put it into practice and do something with it, God notices. I mean, he takes notice. If you read toward the end of that passage in verse 25, it says, then God will bless you for doing it. Then God will bless you for doing. God will take notice, and the blessing comes in the doing, not the listening or the reading of the word. It's in doing it. It's practicing, putting it into practice what it says to do. Putting what we hear, what we read, put it into action in our lives, contributing to the mission and the vision of the church. God blesses contributors. This is what tickles me the most. If I contribute, God's going to bless me. Not financially. I'm not one of those pastors. I'm just saying when God blesses you, he'll take care of you. He'll shine on you. He'll smile on you. In the Old Testament, it says he'll sing over you. Imagine God singing a song for you. And one clear evidence that we are a contributor, if you're kind of wondering, am I a contributor or a consumer? There's evidence that you are a contributor and that you're not a consumer. And that's when we are serving. When we're serving someone, serving others that we live with, serving others here in the church. And in case you didn't know, serving is one of our core values. We place value on serving, especially here at the lake. It's one of the core values. It means we place a lot of value on serving other people. And serving means that we will embrace the heart of Jesus by serving others like he did. It's so important because his Spirit is in us. We have to respond the way Jesus would respond. And the best example, because Jesus was always serving people, and the best example I think I like to read the most over and over is found in the book of John, and Jesus is serving others by washing their feet. And especially the feet of his disciples. In John chapter 13, Jesus and his disciples had got together for a meal, and it says that Jesus gets up from the table, he takes off his robe, and he wraps a towel around his waist, and he begins washing the feet of his disciples. Washing, going along washing their feet, and they're shocked. Especially Peter. I mean, they're shocked because here is their master. Here's their teacher. Here's their rabbi. Here's the Son of God who has spoke to the wind and the waves, peace be still. Here's the Son of God who has gave people back their sight, healed them of leprosy, and he's washing their filthy feet because they wear sandals or barefoot, and wherever they walk is just dirt and mess and trash and camel dung. Okay? There's filthy feet. And he's washing, they're shocked by this, especially Peter. And Peter even tells him to stop. He refuses. Don't wash my feet. I will not allow you to wash my feet. And Jesus was saying to him, unless he washes their feet, unless he teaches them what it means to be a contributor. See, Jesus always served. The scriptures even say that he came to earth not to be served, not a consumer, but to serve, to be a contributor. And he was teaching them what it means to be a contributor. So he says, unless I do this, unless I serve you this way, unless I wash your feet, unless I show you what it means, you can have no part of it. Meaning you'll be a consumer. You'll not be a contributor. Unless I do this. Because he says it in the passage in John 13:15, he says, I have given you example. I have given you an example to follow. I've given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. Here at the lake, we place value in serving others. Because Jesus placed value in serving others. It was important. Jesus was going to be like Jesus, to be the church that wants to be. So we're going to place value on serving others. We believe and we even teach that others are more important than we are. We've done a series that said, you are greater than I am. You are more important than me. And this is God's plan for us to think this way, to serve others. You can read it all through the New Testament. You can find him where he says to serve and serve. I'll just give you a couple examples. Paul wrote to the church in Galatia. He said this in Galatians 5:13. For you have been called. This is God's plan. This is God's plan. I'm doing something new. See, it's already begun. Do you not see? This is my plan. I've already put this in motion. This is my plan for you to live in freedom. To all of you, brothers and sisters, followers of Jesus, for you to live in freedom. And this freedom is from the sin that separates us from God. This freedom keeps us from being eternally separated from God. This freedom is for us to live our life abundantly, to enjoy our life. Because of Jesus' death on the cross and his resurrection, it was all God's plan from the very beginning to give us freedom, to allow his son to take everything that locked us up and made us a slave and crucified him on a cross to die in our place, to lay in a grave for 3 days, and then bring him back to life. And we believe that God loves us so much and has a plan for us to live a life of freedom and accept that plan through Jesus' death and resurrection. Then we have a brand new life, a life of freedom. And then he goes on and says, but don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Don't use what I've done for you to do whatever you want to do. Don't use this freedom to say, I can live like I want to live. I can do what I want to do. I can act like I want to live. It's all about me, myself, and I. I said, no. Don't use the freedom that way, but instead use your freedom, the freedom that I give you, to do what? Serve one another in love. God's plan all along was for us to serve one another. And this is from Paul. Paul even recognized this. And he wasn't with Jesus to see Jesus set the example. So it must have been the participants in the early church that were serving others that got to Paul. And he shared it with another church. But here's a disciple who was there and who was served by Jesus. And it's in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. And Peter was the one that says, do not wash my feet. Don't come near my feet. This is what Peter says in 1 Peter chapter 4. God has given each of you, that's all believers, each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. Don't wash my feet. God has given you a gift, every single one of you, from his vast variety of gifts. And whatever that gift is, serve somebody with it. God has gifted each of us to do something for someone else. It's not for us. We're to serve one another. It's not for us to keep to ourselves, to hoard it to ourselves, to hide it to ourselves, but to be used to serve one another. Think about this. What if Brian chose to keep his worship leading to himself? At home. Just get in the living room, get out your guitar, and he'd play his songs and sing his songs just for him and Jordan and Hudson. Or he might go to his room and just do it for himself. What if all of the worship team kept their talents to themselves? Think about that for just a second. It sounds like that. I call that empty. What if no one welcomed you this morning? No one talked to you in the parking lot. No one held an umbrella. What if no one cleaned the bathrooms this week? And you get in the stall and there's no paper. I know that sounds kind of gross, but you've probably been there, haven't you? Oh, man, this restaurant, nobody did this? That's as far as I'm taking that. What if no one took time to care for and teach our children? We'd be quiet here. So, what if there was no one to take care of our students, teach our students, to reach out to our students, to meet our students where they are? What if they had that ability, but they decided to keep it to themselves? What if I chose to take what God is showing me in his word and just keep it to myself and not share it on Sunday? Contributors do serve. See, I don't just read this for me. I don't just share this for me. I want to share it with participants and contributors and people who are part of the core value of the vision of what's going to happen, what God's doing here in the church, to encourage you, and cheer you on, and challenge you, and give you opportunities to think, well, maybe I can do that. See, that for me to do that, for anybody else to do that, for you to do that, keep everything to yourself that God has gifted you with, that's not serving. That's called selfish. Contributors are not selfish. Contributors place others before themselves. They're more important. They want to make sure that others' needs are met. They serve others as Jesus did. And we value that. We place that as a high value here at the Lake. So here's these questions that these core values, this whole series can kind of bring up. Do I serve as Jesus did? I mean, when I see someone that needs something, do I respond the way that Jesus would respond? Am I focused on others, serving others, or am I focused on myself? What I like, what I don't like, what I want to do, what I don't want to do. Is it all about, do I participate in what God is doing? Am I a consumer or am I a contributor? See, if I'm truly a follower of Jesus, if I tell people I'm a follower of Jesus, see, I don't tell people I'm a Christian. I don't tell people I'm religious. Because it's kind of hard to tell who's religious and who's not. It's kind of hard to tell who's Christian and who's not. But I'm a follower of Jesus. You can't get confused there. But if I'm truly a follower of Jesus, I'm not just listening to God's word. I'm not just sitting and trying to read through the Bible a day at a time and just to read a chapter here and a chapter there, New Testament, Old Testament, throw a psalm in there. I'm not just listening to God's word, but I'm doing what it says. It says to pray for somebody, I pray for them. It says to serve somebody, I serve them. It says to serve one another, I want to serve them. Because I'm up here for you. I'm here to serve you. I want to do everything I can for you. Driving a truck with UPS, all I had to do was deliver boxes. But as a pastor, I serve you. What would my life look like if I was a real contributor? Think about that. What would my life look like? Would it look much different than it is today? Would I be more active than I am today? Would it take up a little more time than would I receive more blessing? God, because He notices and recognizes and takes notice and contributes. People who serve, people who participate in His vision in the church. What would the lake look like? Think about this. What would we look like as the church? Now you have to look back and look at the things that God has led us to do as a church. You say, wow, what if we really participate? What if we really contribute? What if I really serve? What would happen? God said, for I'm about to do something new. See, I've already begun. Do you not see it? That's a promise from God. He's doing something. That's in the Old Testament. But that promise from God in the Old Testament comes back to life. Because, people say, well, that's the Old Testament. You're stuck in the Old Testament. Bring us up to the New Testament. When you go to the New Testament, that promise from the Old Testament comes back to life. In the New Testament, the church in Ephesus, in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, for we are God's workmanship. He had a plan for us. He has a vision for us. Created in Christ Jesus to do good works, to have freedom to do something. Don't use your freedom to do what you want to do. Use your freedom to show and serve one another in love. And this is the best part. This is the best part, which God prepared in advance for us to do. See, it's already begun. I've already begun. Do you not see it? The vision God has for the lake depends on participation. I can tell you all kinds of goals and dreams in the back of my mind because I was an art major. You think I was crazy. But there's things that I see that God could do here because I've seen what He's done. And all that depends. It doesn't depend on how well I tell you about the vision. It depends on the participation and the serving of contributors to the vision. Let's pray. God, we're challenged when we read your word. We open it up and we just start reading and it's just like, wow. I just sort of sometimes just read, but then find out that the Old Testament and New Testament, they're connected, and the promises in the Old Testament, they come back to life in the New Testament, and Jesus was part of the plan, and we're part of the same plan, and Jesus gives us the example. He's contributing, he's partnering, he's participating in God's plan. He's not deterring it. He's not changing the direction of God's plan. He's staying true to God's plan. He's serving others. He's given us an example of how we should live our life. If I say I'm a follower of Jesus, not that I'm a religious person, not that I'm a Christian, but I'm a follower of Jesus, there's the plan. And if I really dwell on that, if I really focus on that, God, and approach you as a follower of Jesus, that I'm seeking you with my whole heart, with my whole mind, you will reveal to me what you've been doing all along because you already started it. I just need eyes to see where it's going. And it's going to take me further than I've ever gone. As a person, as a believer, as a church. I'm so glad I'm part of a church, that I participate in a church, and I serve in a church, and I contribute in a church that has God's blessing. Because the scriptures say, God's word says, He notices those who do. God, thank you for making us a church that does. May we continue to do. May we continue to participate, continue to serve you. to glorify you. I'm mesmerized, God, by how you use us. You are amazing. I can't imagine what it'd be like if I completely trust you, participate with you, and serve with you. It's in Jesus'